Hello and welcome. I am Zabraxi. Last time we looked at the first game in the Star Fox series, so I figured why not? Today let's look at the 9th game in the Star Fox series, Star Fox 2. Why are we like this? Quick question, what do you think the last Super Nintendo game ever released was? If your answer was Fire Emblem Thracia 776, then wow, Google told me the same thing. It was released in September of 1999, and arguably the most difficult Fire Emblem game released, but only in Japan. While this is quite a feat in and of itself, technically, this isn't the final SNES release. That honor goes to Metal Slater Glory Director's Cut. This is actually a remake of the 1991 Famicom release and was developed by HAL Laboratories. Let's not forget that the N64, by the way, was on the market for 3.5 years already by this point. It must have been quite a slow year at HAL. Easily the coolest thing about this director's cut is that the game was never released on a cartridge like normal. Instead, Japanese gamers would use a special Nintendo Power cartridge that you could bring to a store, plug the cartridge into a system, and download a full game onto the cartridge itself for cheaper than the cost of buying the full physical release. That sounds awesome. Nintendo was using flash memory to convert digital ROMs onto physical media without the need to mass produce individual game releases. Imagine being able to download your ROMs onto physical cartridges so that way you could store a physical backup of software that you've purchased. Well, in the 90s, this was actually a possibility and officially endorsed by Nintendo themselves. While the original intention for this system was clearly to be forward-thinking about the digital space and essentially served as a promotion for positive emulation, this system today would have radically changed the landscape of games preservation. This is so wild to think about, considering the fact that Nintendo of 2022 refuses to even utter words like emulation or preservation, despite quite literally being the leading force in that technology. While Metal Slater is the last officially Nintendo licensed Super Famicom game, it's not actually the last still. In 1994, a game called Nightmare Busters was planned to release, but due to financial issues and other problems, the development studio couldn't release the final product. Years later, the internet would stumble upon beta versions of the game, and many years of excitement later, Nightmare Busters was released in 2013 by Super Fighter Team. Easily the best part of this release is that the game came out on a physical cartridge that was designed to be able to plug into any region Super Nintendo or Super Famicom console. And this brings us to 2017, where Nintendo themselves brought in the last official game of the Super Nintendo library. That game would come to be known as Trying to Find a SNES Mini. The early days of the Super NES Classic were a nightmare for fans who couldn't find the system anywhere. It was so bad that then Nintendo of America president Reggie Fils-Aime had to publicly warn people not to buy from scalpers. Why were they so dang hard to find? Well, the actual answer is artificial scarcity. But potentially the largest reason this mini console was so desirable is that it contained an official release of a Super Nintendo game that had never been on the market before. 21 years late to the scene, we were finally able to properly play a sequel to one of the most important games ever made. Star Fox in 1993 blew everyone away with its incredible opening. Seeing this level of 3D on a home console was just not an event we were ready for. Star Fox 2's opening cutscene is even more impressive. We're now at a point with panning action shots and direct interaction between the models. This is so far beyond what many believed the Super Nintendo was technically capable of, but here it is. Now, keep in mind, I always aim to look back at these retro titles in context to when they were released. I always try to do my best to look at a game as if I'm living in the year that it hit the market. This isn't always perfect, as there will inevitably be a bias that comes with hindsight, or just from all the experience from game design development that we can't unlearn. Star Fox 2 may have released in in 2017 for the first time, but as the title screen says, this was made for 1996. So let's talk about the game itself. First thing is that you can choose your difficulty mode right at the start. The original essentially had 3 difficulties, but they were masked as the different routes that you can take in your retaliation against the invading forces of Andross. Here, it's just normal, hard, and expert. Quick warning. Don't bother playing normal. Seriously. I'm not trying to act all cool and humble brag or whatever, but if the only game mode you ever end up playing on is normal, you will have genuinely no idea of what Star Fox offers. Even if you're omega bad at video games, I highly, highly recommend that you try hard mode first. I know, I am totally coming off as one of those super sweaty power gamers who only plays the hardest mode and uses the Ring Fit controller for every game.
Now this is playing with power.
There are so many new elements to Star Fox 2 from the first game, but a playthrough in normal will just never give the game a chance to deliver the core of the experience to you. If the Souls games had an easy mode, I wouldn't care. All right, there. I played my reverse gatekeeping card so people can't hold it over me anymore, all right? Although, now I probably just triggered the entire Souls community, so... Oh, hey, would you look at that? Star Fox 2 is on the screen. Oh, wow. Let's start playing. Okay, so Andross is back alive, apparently. Wait a minute. What is this? Is this a strategy map? Are these battle cruisers? There are missiles getting launched at Corneria? What is happening here? Oh, and now you can choose which characters you want to play? Oh, that's cool. Who are these 2 chicks? This isn't a rail shooter anymore? Yeah, so I didn't know much about Star Fox 2 going into it, and wow, it's a very different game from the first one. What this really boils down to is a strategy game interspersed with action stages. The goal is to prevent Corneria from taking as much damage as possible. To do this, you're going to move around the map to certain events and locations. There are several different stage types that you're going to run into. If there's a missile heading to Corneria, you can fly into it, which will load up a stage where you have to destroy it before it reaches its destination. Certain planets might also have a base of operations, so you'll be required to head onto those areas, clean out everything that's going on, and move on. The battle cruisers I mentioned earlier will also act almost like this space armada level from the first game, where you have to battle your way onto the ship, and then once you're inside, fight your way to destroy the core, destroy the whole thing from the inside out, and move on. You can also be intercepted by a mercenary force hired by Andross to stop you, which is really cool. This marks the first introduction of Starwolf, who is tasked with interrupting your plans, and you'll have to fight them down along the way. You never really get a chance to be comfortable in Star Fox 2. There's always something happening on the map, and you're forced to respond to every threat in an incredibly timely manner. How you approach each objective is up to you, but can be influenced by the location of the incoming danger relative to Corneria or by which characters you've chosen. Oh yeah, being able to choose your characters, by the way, is an extremely unique aspect of this game and very important. Not only do you get to choose one character, you also get to choose a backup wingman who will help you at certain times, but more importantly, serves as your extra life if you ever die in the first pick. In Star Fox 2, health is persistent across stages, so you have to be extremely careful to pick the characters that are most fit for the job and that best align with your skill set. You can choose from Fox and Falco, who are your average, well-rounded fighters with access to the Nova Bomb from the first game, Peppy and Slippy, who are slow but incredibly tanky. They even come with an item called the Repair item, good name, to make them even beefier. The final 2 picks are Miyu and Faye, the agile of the bunch. These 2 are very fragile in terms of defense, but insanely fast, and also start off at an offensive advantage by opening with twin blasters.
Oh, and if you like Miyu and Faye, then cherish this moment, because this is it. This is all you're gonna get. They will never again show up in the Star Fox series. In fact, they won't even have the satisfaction of showing themselves in the Star Fox manga. Girl power?
Good luck.
Still the best part of the whole game, by the way. So remember when I mentioned that this was a strategy game? There's a single element that forces you to be keenly aware of that fact. Everything you do in Star Fox 2 is happening simultaneously. The absolutely brilliant design here specifically stems from the reality that while you are having it out in a dogfight against a Starwolf member, the other aspects of the map are still happening.
Yeah, the first time I went to shoot down a missile, I was taking my sweet time. I mean, it's impressive. Just look at these stages. They're not on rails, but instead are free-roaming 3D spaces. In essence, Star Fox 2 marks the introduction to the all-range mode that would become famous in the series. I just hadn't expected 16-bit technology to be capable of this type of gameplay. Argonaut Games should be proud of themselves. I don't say this lightly, but this is truly a feat of engineering. Anyway, so yeah, you're supposed to shoot the missile down a bunch until it blows up, leave the level, and Are those missiles closer to Corneria? Oh god! Oh, it's gonna hit!
Oh god, here it comes! Sound the alarm! This is really happening! Oh my god, no! No!
The moment of realization that the world outside the levels was still moving on, it completely changed my view of the gameplay. I want to just stress how much I appreciate this constant stressor because, honestly, outside of this slight fire under your ass, Star Fox 2 is pretty boring. It's a technical marvel that is impressive to behold, mind you, but that alone doesn't make for a fun and enjoyable experience. So let's go over this a bit further. There are 4 different types of stages that you'll run across. First is to destroy a missile en route to Corneria. Second is a dogfight in a 3D arena against members of Starwolf or other bosses that might show up. Third is to invade a battlecruiser and destroy its central core. Fourth is invading planetary bases and destroying their cores. Attacking a missile is about as basic as it gets. You'll navigate to the missile on the map and be loaded into a 3D battle arena with the missile moving through space. Your goal is to shoot it enough times to blow it up. Your only real threat here is space debris and the clock. As mentioned earlier, the longer you spend doing something trivial, such as shooting up a missile, means more time for bad things to be happening on the open map. This is all you do in these levels. Seriously, load in, find the missile, shoot it a bunch, turn around, shoot some more, turn around, shoot some more, victory next level. These stages just feel like such a waste of time. Well, they might feel that way because they are a waste of time. That's actually clearly their intended purpose. Traveling to a missile to stop it isn't a difficult task, but one that's designed to waste your time so that other events can be happening outside the level. This leads to the intended strategy to quite literally just speed these levels up and move on from them ASAP. What about the 1v1 dogfights though? Those have to be loads of fun at least, right? Well, yes, alright, fine. The first few times you bump into these encounters, it's a load of fun. I mean, how do I honestly say that dueling in space isn't cool? Of course it's cool, especially as you're focused on the task at hand, making your way over to a planetary fortification only to have this wolf guy show up and start kicking the crap out of you. Or even better yet, remember that serpent dragon from the intro? Well, that's a boss. Yeah, and it can pop out of nowhere and decide to fight you, which totally screws up all strategy you had. These moments really keep you on your toes. You need to make a plan, but you also have to be prepared for an interruption and be constantly ready for it in the back of your mind. The catch, though, is the same as the missiles. This is it. All of these encounters feel pretty much identical. At least they will if you only ever play on normal mode. This is but one reason why I was so against playing normal if you're planning a single playthrough of this game. On the later difficulties, you'll bump into new boss encounters across all sorts of environments. Take the Queen Diare, for example. You actually have to submerge yourself underwater to discover this massive octopus thing and try and take it down. Or how about the Night Knack, who's a towering robotic protector deep in an enemy base wielding a giant shield to protect itself. These battles vary up the combat drastically. While none of them are mechanical feats in any meaningful way, they at least establish some creative gameplay beyond the spectacle itself. However, the battlecruiser and planet invasions are basically two sides of the same coin. One happens in space and then results in destroying a base inside a ship. The other happens on a planet and then proceeds to a base inside said planet.
Actually, see, they're actually the same thing. See, being on a planet is the same as being in the vacuum of space, because planets are themselves within said vacuum of... Ah! Dang it! Almost had him!
The moments in space are quite a bummer. Yeah, Star Fox, by the way. There is a level of technical appreciation here, but realistically, the scope is pretty limited, and if you've seen what the original Star Fox is capable of, then not that much really stands out while in the vacuum of space. You essentially just follow the target reticle, make your way to the ship, and along the way, you might occasionally see a rock or two. There might even be an enemy if you're super lucky. But the fact that all of the battle cruisers have this intro piece is just so debilitating. It's dull, it's absent, it's just boring. Nothing happens. Imagine the worst level in Star Fox and then strip out like 98% of the enemies and obstacles. That's what we have here. This is the epitome of filler, which is a shame because when you finally arrive at the ship itself, it's rather impressive. Before we jump into the bases themselves though, let's hop onto the planets first. Across Lilat, there are bases set up by Andros. Yes, all of the planets that you cleared out in the last game are now back to Concord. What the hell was General Pepper doing all this time? Similar to the battlecruiser stages, you have to go through an intro section before you can enter the base itself. The planetary opening is far better than their space counterparts. There are actual puzzles and little tasks that you're forced to execute in order to gain access to the fortifications below. Some of these might involve landing on a moving platform to hit a switch. Another might involve hitting all of the switches in an area. Oh, and don't forget the level where you have to hit the slot machine over and over again until you finally get the right pattern. That one kind of sucks. And apparently Star Fox just really loves to gamble. On the harder difficulties, you'll occasionally stumble upon a boss as well. And these bosses are by far the most interesting of all of the intros. Realistically, when I said that planetary openings were better than the space versions, it's not by much, really. I mean, the bar for the space sections is so low that practically anything is better by default, though. At least on these base openings, there are tasks and enemies and things to do rather than dodging a rock once every 10, maybe 15 seconds. The bosses, though, are actually pretty fun and require you to make clever use of both the Arwing and Walker forms. Ah, yes, the famous Walker, which is so synonymous with Star Fox 2, it would eventually make its way back into the series in Star Fox Zero almost 20 years later. Here's the thing. The ability to transition into the Walker is cool, but I can't help but feel that its presence is grossly overhyped. Mechanically, it definitely helps provide those pace breakers that all games need. Yeah, when entering into a battlecruiser and while on a planet or inside a planetary base, you can transform your Arwing into this mechanical waddle chicken, and vice versa at the press of a single button. Essentially, you're trading speed for control. Being grounded always allows for much better precision, and the ability to hit these switches that you'll find everywhere at seemingly every single corner. Entering these giant star system invading bases of operations is so astounding. The size and scale, it's just inconceivable that this runs on 16-bit hardware. Since threats are still occurring on the map while you're taking down these bases, maneuvering through these areas is critical, especially in regards to speed. This is where the duality of the Walker and Arwing actually becomes a rather beautiful dance and kind of counters the point I made earlier. You'll speed your way down a hallway into a room with a puzzle, transform into a Walker to give you more precision in solving said puzzle, and then bring out the Arwing once more to boost off to the core. While this spectacle of attacking the core of these massive fortresses is rather cool, all you actually do here is spin around the thing and shoot. There's no real strategy here. This is it. This is what you got. Something I do need to mention, though, is that there is something important to doing all of these bases and what you need to do inside of them while destroying the cores. In all of these massive structures, you'll find these medals called pepper coins. If you happen to collect all of these pepper coins, then you'll unlock some special upgrades that can quite literally change the game. The thing that's tough here is that the collection of these is locked to each individual game mode. So if you play on normal, collect all the coins, and expect to unlock those powers across hard and expert, then I'm sorry, but I wasted that same amount of time, so don't be like me. The odds of you collecting all the pepper coins in a single run is pretty low unless you know your way around the stages incredibly effectively. So, this is where the classic arcade replayability will kick in with this particular Star Fox game. So what do these coins actually unlock? Once you've collected every pepper coin on that difficulty, you'll gain access to a secret base on the map. Entering this base gives you a chance to grab a bunch of upgrades and power-ups. Most of them are pretty inconsequential, like extra lives, etc. There is one upgrade though that is so good and so helpful. This is the homing blast. You could already charge up your shots in Star Fox 2 now, but with this upgrade, when you charge a blast, it will launch directly at a locked-on target. This is so good and so critical that the fact that it's only unlockable basically after you've beaten the game is just so questionable.
And the thing is, Argonaut knew that the homing attack was critical to Star Fox 2. We know that because the leaked ROM that was playable for years had the homing attack in the game at the very start, unlocked by default. I never really played the ROM too much myself, but I can't imagine having played that thing for years only to finally play the official release and it not having the homing attack. Yikes.
The thing is, the reason this really bugs me isn't that something more powerful is locked behind a completion bonus. That's fine. Completing a Ratchet & Clank game 100% to be rewarded with the strongest weapon available is cool because it's just stupid powerful. The homing missile, though, it is more important than it should be. The primary reason for this is because aiming in Star Fox 2 is far more difficult than it has any right to be. If you watched my episode on the original Star Fox, then you know that the largest issue that game had is its frame rate. The constant chugging made aiming incredibly difficult at times. Now imagine if there was a game that had those same issues as the original Star Fox, but the frame rate was often worse. And by often, I mean basically every single level. Actually, don't bother imagining, because that's what we're here. We have Star Fox 2 right in front of you. The frame rate will regularly drop to single digits during flashy moments, which of course are usually the times when you're struggling to aim the most, because if things are happening on the screen, that usually means danger. In terms of difficulty, a significant portion of it is due to this frame rate issue because you're constantly trying to rock the D-pad back and forth to line up the shot, only for the game to lag, and now you're behind your shot, so you have to re-aim, but the game is still lagging, so you're behind again, and by God, this is so frustrating.
Okay, I think I got him. Here we go. I can get him. I can nail him. Oh, come on!
2 games in a row, 2 Star Fox games back to back with this exact same crippling problem. I get it. I get the technical feat and limitation, but also, God, this is not fun to play. Oh, and you know what would remedy this problem entirely? How about a homing shot? Wouldn't that be great? But no, you have to grab all these damn coins first. Essentially, the only way to solve Star Fox's biggest mechanical issue is to 100% complete the entire game. Isn't that exciting? Oh, and if you collect all the medals across every game mode, you can change the title screen to have Fox in the background instead of Andross. Okay, that's kinda cool. Star Fox 2 is an interesting case. It was developed too early compared to the technology available at the time in order for it to show off its true potential. Paradoxically, Star Fox 2 would then release too late in its official capacity on the SNES Mini and Nintendo Switch Online. The length of time since 1996 is just so large that appreciating Star Fox 2 for what it is and what it could be requires a bit of effort to recontextualize your mind. The frame rate and input lag make the experience fatiguing as you fight the technology itself rather than the enemies. I've heard from some that frame rate in general wasn't a big problem back then because we were younger and we just dealt with it. While I think that's an incredibly loose argument by its very nature, I also just think it's not true. While at 7 years old, I might not be able to articulate that my frustration with something was down to how many times the frame rendered on my TV. I knew though when something felt bad to play. Star Fox 2 feels really, really bad to play most of the time. There are moments of glory, though. The music is a pretty steady ride that's enjoyable to listen to. The new fight against Andross is a fun time, especially given that he actually looks like Andross now. Even the idea behind General Pepper coins adds an additional layer to the replayability that defines these more arcade types of experiences. I mean, having basically every stage be an all-range mode 3D battle arena is not only a technical marvel, but expands upon the gameplay potential of Star Fox in a way that would only increase even further in the next entry. Unfortunately, there are just so many problems that shine brighter most of the time. When the hardest boss in the entire game is the frame rate, then there's an issue. Enemy design can be barely recognizable visually, and completely indistinguishable sometimes. Transitioning into the walker is an interesting pace breaker, but it doesn't offer nearly enough to sell it as a cool mechanic. Thankfully, the core of Star Fox as a real-time strategy game, trying to manage map location and level completion, is a stellar design foundation. Knowing that the eventual Star Fox Command would be headed by one of the lead creators of Star Fox 2 gives me high hopes because the blueprint laid out before us is a good one. Star Fox 2 is an incredibly stunning tech demo that fails in many ways as a game. The D-pad of the SNES controller just isn't built for the expansive 3D spaces that make up every bit of this experience, and the hiccups from that cripple what could have been a great game into the shell of an unrealized potential. Make no mistake about it, Star Fox 2 is a critical entry in the Star Fox franchise. Loads of new ideas and mechanics started here and would eventually become staples of this beloved IP. For that, I can appreciate Star Fox 2. As a game, though, I think it was just too early and a bit too late at the same time.
Thank you so much for watching. What did you think of Star Fox 2? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Did you think I just have really bad taste in games? I mean, yeah, probably. But for now, regardless of my thoughts of Star Fox 2, I have something special to get to. Bye-bye!